Well, good evening, everyone. I had to come on and do a live stream tonight, given the news that's broken today that Senedd members down in the Welsh Parliament have broken regulations and they've broken lockdown rules back in December. They were holding a drinks party, that's right, down in the Parliament where the people of Wales get to elect their politicians. And yet some of these politicians were very critical of Dominic Cummings driving in his car to Barnet Castle and such forth. And that, of course, was the MS for Blind Eye Gwent, Aline Davies. Well, I'm inviting you on tonight. You can chat, you can speak to me, you can send in comments, you can say what you want. This is a platform to all of you joining me on Facebook. Please feel free to like and to share this broadcast, because I'm going to discuss tonight why politicians, or why should politicians be allowed to get away with hypocrisy. Elected members to our Welsh Parliament who break legislation and restrictions and lockdowns, and in the same breath are telling all of us to stay at home while they shut the pubs and stop them selling alcohol since the 4th of December. Now, of course, actions have been taken. The First Minister has now suspended Aline Davies from the group, the Welsh Labour Party. In fact, we've got a comment here from Rowan Powell. Thank you for tuning in, Rowan. Really appreciate it. I know who you are. Aline Davies has now been suspended by the Labour group. Well, you see, Aline Davies has got history because he's been sacked before as a cabinet minister. So in effect, we've seen this happen before where ministers get pulled over, they get suspended, and then nothing really happens. Now, of course, there will be an investigation into the whole fiasco. As we've seen, this was broken by a number of media outlets on social media. Bubble Wales were one of them, and of course Guido Fawkes, and this was their caption or headline: Tory and Labour Senedd members lockdown party. And if you read the description, it appears that in December, whilst pubs were on lockdown, whilst you were being told to stay at home, that politicians were on a booze up down at T Howell, which is adjacent to the Welsh Parliament itself, to the Senedd, the Assembly. So I wonder what you think about it. Feel free to comment, jump on board, ask any questions, and share the broadcast with as many people as you can. The truth is that politicians should be held to a higher standard, to a higher account. Of course, we, the public, make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Listen, no one's perfect. People have done things and broken regulations and rules. We've all done things, I should imagine. But when you are an elected politician and you're making the laws and you're demanding that people comply to those laws, and then you're complicit in breaking them yourself, surely they should be held to account. Now, just this evening, I set up a petition that some of you might be interested in, that when politicians break laws, legislation, regulations on lockdown, they should automatically resign. So I'm just going to play some of your comments here so you can see on the screen. Once again, Rowan, Nick Ramsey and Paul Davies. For those who don't know, Paul Davies is the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Both need to be suspended, also pending further investigation. It simply shouldn't be one rule for them and one rule for us. Now, you will find this phrase, one rule for them, one rule for us, coming up all night. The reality is, I've read the latest report that's been published by the Welsh Conservatives, and they've said that their members and ministers have apologised, that it was a misunderstanding. Do you accept that? Do you think it was a misunderstanding? Or are we seeing again, as we've seen many times before, politicians on big fat salaries pulling the wool over our eyes and making laws for us while they break them themselves? Remember Chipgate, Von Gethen? Yes, that's another one as well. Paul Jones has said here, if he's suspected by Labour, how does he keep his seat? Well, it's a good question. Many of you know I fought for Blaen y Gwent in the general election in 2019. And Aline Davies, of course, is the MS for Blaen y Gwent. He's been suspended. It is a good question. You know, will we see this investigation go anywhere? Will the Senedd or the Welsh Government actually take real action, and will they sack him? That's not me calling for him to be sacked. That's a matter of process, and they have to go through the investigation. Steve Roberts has come online and said politicians live in their political bubble, totally insulated from the policies which affect the man. If that is not the quote of the evening, Stephen, I don't know what is. One of the reasons I wanted to get involved in politics is because I'm not a politician, and I'm fed up with politicians actually doing what we've seen happen now. The hypocrisy stinks, to be quite frank with you, Stephen. Politicians living in this political bubble on big fat salaries don't need to worry like you and I about being furlonged or work or where the next pound is coming in. They really don't give a hoot about ordinary working class people, which I class myself to be. So thank you for that, Stephen. It's got to the point now where surely with the elections coming up, these politicians must be held to account. The people of Wales must suddenly wake up to the fact that we can't allow this cartel down at Cardiff Bay to be dictating to members of the public, telling them what to do, and at the same breath, breaking the law themselves. Rowan again has said, not a misunderstanding at all, just a pathetic excuse for an apology. Well, that is very, very true. Please don't forget to share this broadcast on Facebook with as many people as you can. I'd appreciate it. It's off the cuff. It is, of course, Tuesday night, and the news that broke today about politicians down in Cardiff Bay, and what has happened is that in December, they had a booze up down in T Howell, down in Cardiff, when they were telling everybody else in Wales not to go out. They shut the pubs and stopped them selling alcohol. But yet they had a booze up in Cardiff. So I wonder what you think about that. Please keep sending your comments in. If you want to add anything, feel free to debate, because this is an important issue, especially given the fact that these politicians are elected and trusted by members of the public and constituents, and we must hold them to the highest of all accounts. And surely now they should resign. Listen, that's my personal opinion. They should resign. Just another point coming in here. Let's have a look. Yeah, got a good point here. This is from Austin. My only worry, Richard, is that pointing out hypocrisy is potentially dodgy. Yeah, good point. I am not in favor of anyone being harassed for trying to have a drink. Well, you've got a good point there, because let's be honest, I like a good drink, of course, like many other people. But I think in this instance, Austin, I would disagree with you. For the simple reason these were elected politicians, and T Howell is adjacent to the Welsh Parliament, and they've made an excuse that they were talking business, but we don't really know the details yet, do we? Let's let the investigation take its place before we come judge and jury. But it does beg the question, are politicians allowed to make laws and legislate and then break those legislation and lockdown rules themselves? Is that acceptable? Would you accept that from the person that you elected as your politician to represent you, as an MP in Westminster, or even here in Wales as an MS, as they're now known? So there's a lot of questions around this, and of course a lot of investigation that's going into it. But the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, we've got elections coming up, as many of you know, in May, and there was talk about delaying them. It's very unlikely it's going to happen, or given some statements the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has made this week. It looks as if they're going to go ahead, which is good, I think, for democracy, because, let's be honest, you can't delay an election because of COVID. They managed it in America, and well, look what happened there. We won't go down that road tonight and talking about Trump and Biden. That's another story for another time. But what is happening in Welsh politics? Are we able to trust these politicians anymore? It's a good question. Now, I wouldn't, I'm not one of those who snitches on my neighbors and says next door is having a booze up. I'm not one of those types of people, of course. But we all must use common sense. We know that the regulations and rules are there to protect us from this virus, to be safe and sensible. Of course, we know that. But the real issue I have tonight is that the people who make those legislations and those regulations and those lockdown rules is when they blatantly breach them. If allegedly this drinking shenanigan took place in the Senedd, then there is a real issue of trust. Would you vote for them again in an election? Would you support them in an election? That is the question. So please feel free to fire some more thoughts in. Anything you want to add, it really helps the broadcast where others can see what you have to say, because this is about you, not just about me. A good question here from Steve. Is alcohol available in the Welsh Assembly? Well, Stephen, I have been in the Welsh Assembly quite a few times. I've been down there having meetings with a number of politicians over the last year or so, 2 years or so. But I have never seen alcohol there myself. So the answer is I don't know. Maybe some of our guests on Facebook would be able to tell us. I know certainly in Westminster, the House of Lords, they have a bar. But I don't know about the Welsh Assembly. Maybe one of our viewers can tell us and let us know if that is the case. I mean, I'm not against having a booze up. I mean, let's be honest. We all like a pint. I'm missing the pub. It's driving me nuts. I just want to go and have a pint with my mates, in a local somewhere and talk crap, which is what we do, and put the world right. We sit there and we talk about politics, rugby, football, most cases up here in the valleys is Liverpool, but anyway, or Man United. I'm a Tottenham fan, so we don't talk much about that. Anyway, but the truth is, that we know that that's part of life. But the real issue here is a matter of trust. Politicians that are elected and they set the rules, as I've said, and I keep saying, and then they break them. The hypocrisy is so loud, given the fact, and I'm going to mention it because it's real and because it's important, given the fact that Alan Davis, the MS for Blind Eye Gwent, he was so vocal when Dominic Cummings, if you remember the whole Dominic Cummings scandal, when he drove, up to that castle and he breached the regulations at the time. Man, Welsh Labour politicians were going mental. They were calling for his resignation. They were asking him to step down, for Boris to sack him. And here we have a situation where the same person, Alan Davis, is done exactly the same, breaking, as far as we have been told, the reports that we've received, and allegedly, I say that allegedly because until the investigation is done, we don't know. If that is the case, then he needs to go. So here we go. So he's going to have Austin's having another go at me now. That's perfect, Austin. I'm going to have another go at you by calling these people out. Do you think that they are reinforcing the idea that tougher and more merciless lockdowns is not only legitimate, but you end up demanding it? Yeah, it's a good point, because as you will know, many of my viewers, I am not a fan of lockdowns. I don't believe they work. That's just my personal opinion, but I abide by them and follow the rules and regulations that have been set out by the government to the best of my ability, because I believe in doing what is right. But yeah, I mean, there is an issue, isn't it? Whether or not calling them out legitimizes really what they're doing and demanding for further restrictions and lockdowns. I don't think that is necessarily the case. I don't know the details, as many of you have read the reports today in the news here, especially in Wales, what actually took place. What I have read is that the Welsh Conservative Party have published an apology, and Paul Davies, the Welsh Conservative leader, has said they were actually having a meeting. They were having a meeting to discuss some policy issues around heart conditions or something like that. You can read it for yourself there. And I was like, well, okay, that's fine. That's okay. So how did the story come out? Well, apparently there were some catering staff working in the kitchen in the assembly. I've been there. I've eaten there as well. And some of the kitchen staff apparently got very concerned about what was happening. They saw it. And this is how this leaked out. So there were staff members working in the assembly, in the kitchen, in catering, who got this. And obviously the story has gone now viral on social media, more so here in Wales, maybe across the UK as well. Eventually it'll be on the news tonight, no doubt. But the real issue for me is this. It's about trust. Can we continue to trust these politicians that we've elected when they're able to do that? What would be the difference if a pub opened its doors and 6 of my mates piled in there and we had a good old booze up? What would be the difference? So we have Paul's just mentioned it there. Now, sorry, Stephen, can we have a meeting down the pub? Well, it's a good question, a very good question, Stephen. But folks, I just want to come online very quickly to say that's my rant over with. I'm starting to do a lot more live. I'm like, Marmite, you love me or hate me. Most people hate me. I don't mind. I don't care, because this is my podcast and this is my kitchen and my house and my phone and everything else. But thank you so much for coming on. Keep an eye on the story, because it's going to get a lot hotter, I think, over the next few weeks. And of course, with elections coming up, maybe you need to consider what you're going to do with your vote. But I hope you support me and stand with us to vote to abolish the Welsh Assembly. Catch you again soon. Bye for now.